My friends, the great experiment.
We should analyze the optical properties of this movie.
We've got 50,000 movies in the database. There must be something worth watching.
This is a movie house. This place isn't about function. It's about fantasy.
You could always read a book.
Welcome to Greatest Trek. It's a new Star Trek podcast from the makers of The Greatest Generation, who are, right now, doing the penultimate episode of Greatest Trek Film Festival.
We sure are.
The in-between new Star Trek hit podcast we're doing, where we watch a bunch of fun science fiction movies. I'm Adam Pranica.
I'm Ben Harrison. Yeah, mostly science fiction movies. We're not ending with one.
I mean, we can leave that argument for when we record that show, but yeah, I think there are science fiction aspects to that.
Sure. This was a new one on me. This was one that you pushed for that I hadn't seen. And then when it started to get scheduled in the company Slack, Bill Tilley was flipping out. He was so excited.
Bill. Much like Rambo First Blood Part 2 is my entry point into the Rambo universe. 2010, the year we make contact, was my entry point into the 2001 universe. I saw this movie way before 2001.
Was that because of your fandom of Peter Hyams, the writer, director of photography of this movie?
Peter Hyams gets all the credits here. And
just a staggering list of credits.
Ordinarily, that would be a disaster if you see that on screen.
He made a bunch of Van Damme movies, like Sudden Death Time Cop. He made End of Days with Schwarzenegger. He made some Sean Connery films.
Sure.
Like Outland and The Presidio.
Yeah.
This is not the director that I would have put like right in the lineup behind Kubrick.
Well, what's interesting about how Peter Hyams got the project was Arthur C. Clarke finishes writing this book, and one of the first people he calls is Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah.
He tells Stanley Kubrick, do not let anyone make this movie. If you have any power at all in Hollywood, this movie can never be made.
Wow.
Almost as if, like, all these movies are yours except my sequel book, 2010. Attempt no movies here. And so Kubrick's like, yeah, you don't have to worry about me. That's fine. So Peter Hyams gets involved, and he's like, how am I going to follow Stanley Kubrick? I guess I better call him. And get Stanley Kubrick's blessing. Peter Hyams is like, look, I've got ideas here. I'm not a hack. I'm not going to try to make 2001. 2001 is a masterpiece and almost like a genre of itself in terms of like science fiction films. Like, don't worry about me biting your rhymes. Like, I just want to make a cool science fiction movie where I do all the work, like being DP and writer and director and so forth. And Kubrick, to his credit, it's like, just make your movie, man. Like, have fun with it, which is not what I would expect the tone of Stanley Kubrick to be.
The tone of Stanley Kubrick was essentially like, go fuck yourself, Arthur C. Clarke. I'm giving this action movie director my blessing.
I guess. I don't know. I don't know the details of the Arthur C. Clarke Stanley Kubrick relationship as it pertains to this exact moment, but
because I understood that 2001 was a very like close collaboration between the two. Like they were kind of like working on the book and the movie as like two things of a part.
Yeah.
Peter Hyams also directed. He directed Outland, which is also set on Io, a moon of Jupiter, and came out like 3 years before this. So I wonder if it was just his like moon of Jupiter curriculum vitae that persuaded the suits in Hollywood that Peter Hyams was the man for the job.
Wait. This is a Moon of Jupiter movie? We got to get Hyams on this. He is built for this shit.
He's already been there.
Yeah. Pretty incredible how this film came to be, but is it an incredible movie, Ben? Let's find out.
Let's do it. Let's jump right in. It's 1984's smash hit sequel to 2001, A Space Odyssey. It's 2010. Sometimes just styled 2010, but sometimes 2010, the year we make contact.
The beginning of this film has to call back events in 2001. In order to tell its story, you got to do that, but there are a number of different ways you can, right? Like there's sort of the previously on reel we get here, and starting your sequel with images from a masterpiece. I know you have to do it, but I was struck by just the fucking hubris of that.
Sheer fucking hubris.
Like taking frames of a Stanley Kubrick film and putting them in your film.
Right. I mean, it's almost like taking frames of a Star Trek movie directed by Nicholas Meyer and
putting them in your live Greatest Gen show.
I think this is canonical Trek right off the bat because we do just kind of watch a brief summary of the previous film. And it's also canonical Trek because one of the main set pieces in the film is the USS Discovery. We end this last time on with a bit of on-screen text about the USS Discovery's condition being unknown at this point.
I like a movie telling you what it's setting out to do right away. And in both the visuals and the text on screen, you get it immediately. Why did Hal malfunction? Whatever happened to Bowman? What's the deal with the monoliths? And is Discovery out there and okay? That's what the movie's about.
We learn pretty quickly that Roy Scheider is the head that sort of rolled for the Discovery mission being perceived back on Earth as a failure. You know, all hands lost in space. And, I mean, we don't even know what he meant when he broadcast back the thing about, my God, it's full of stars.
That playback is so creepy and unsettling that you get throughout this film.
Yeah.
All the different ways it's played, all the different speeds.
My God, it's full of stars.
Ugh, it makes my skin crawl, I gotta be honest.
Yeah, they found some unique ways to smash the audio and make it sound strange. Like, it doesn't sound strange in the particular way that so much other movie audio is made to sound strange.
Yeah.
So yeah, Roy Scheider is up like working on a radio telescope array, and this Russian dude has walked up and is like yelling up at him. It's a very funny opening.
Neatness! It's a good quality. You'll make someone a fine wife. You are Dr. Haywood Floyd?
Who the hell are you?
A great scene for a movie, like extremely cinematic, extremely big, a great introduction to Floyd. But what's Floyd doing there? He's like tightening bolts on this array.
Yeah.
I think there are people a little lower on the org chart that could do that instead of him.
Like, he got let go as like the administrator of the legally distinct but evocative of NASA entity in this movie. But he's like the chair of like a department at a university. It doesn't seem like wrenching on radio telescope is in the job description.
Yeah.
But this Russian guy is like, hey, like, so you got fired because that mission didn't go well, and you may claim that you took this job because the pay is better, but I know that it probably burns your toast that you don't know what happened. We would really like to get to the bottom of what that monolith is out there and what happened with your HAL 9000 robot. And, you know, like, we don't know how to look at the data on HAL, but if we took you on our Russian space mission that's going to kick the ass of the American space mission, we could get that done.
One of the things we're known for, you and me, on our 2 hit Star Trek podcasts are the impressions and the voice work that we do.
Mm.
If you can't get on board with Dana Elkar's Russian accent, you're going to be in some trouble when you're watching this movie. If this is plausible to you, you can do it.
You can make it through.
Yeah. Dana Elkar, famously from MacGyver, the television series.
Oh, really?
That made him famous.
Wow. No wonder Bill Tilley likes this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the greats. This plan he presents seems fairly persuasive, right? It's sort of like if you want to get out there to Discovery, you kind of want to be on the first bus, right? And guess what? The Russians have the first ride out there. So what are you going to do?
They're building a ship and the U.S. is building a ship, but the U.S. one isn't going to be done for like a year. So there's a question about whether this can even be done like from a diplomatic standpoint, because this envisages a beautiful future of 2010 where the Soviet Union and the United States are still rattling their sabers at each other. A beautiful and distant memory, that type of thing, right?
You almost expect a Richard Valeriani style news hit.
From the French aircraft carrier Foch, somewhere in the Mediterranean.
I mean, instead, what you get are sort of news adjacent type updates about the war condition between Russia and America throughout. But yeah, that's going to be running in the background of this entire movie, this tension between countries that have to collaborate on this space mission.
Yeah, Scheider like goes to his office and learns that the orbit of the Discovery is an issue. It's like moving towards Io, which doesn't make sense. It like shouldn't be moving given the fact that it's dead in space. He goes and meets up with his buddy, who is the new administrator of NASA, outside the White House, and Roy Scheider pitches him on going in and pitching the president on a joint U.S.-Russian mission out to Jupiter to find out what happened to Discovery.
It's a pretty short list of folks who've got to be on this one, right? It's, obviously Floyd himself, but also Walter Chernow, who designed the Discovery ship, and Dr. Chandra, who created the HAL 9000 computer, are the other two that he wants going along with this.
Yeah, and we meet Dr. Chandra right after the NASA administrator flips Roy Scheider a ton of shit for making this totally insane request of him. Like, we kind of like learn through this scene that the president is like sort of a Reagan type, like a reactionary asshole that is not necessarily putting peace on Earth as his highest priority. So yeah, we cut over to Bob Balaban playing Dr. Chandra, and he's talking to Sal,
voiced by Candice Bergen.
Delightfully voiced by Candice Bergen, the girl version of Hal.
That is correct. I enjoy talking about Hal.
And you can tell she's a girl because her eye is blue and not red.
There's a manner of speaking that Bob Balaban has in all of his interactions with his computer creations that border on creepy. Like, he's a guy arriving to his office that seems as though he's going to draw the blinds and take off his pants when he talks to Sal here, you know?
Does this disturb you?
I am unable to answer that without more specific information.
And what's going on here seems pretty pervy, doesn't it?
Unfortunately, instead of having computer sex, he wants to do a lobotomy on Sal. And the reason he wants to do this is to duplicate the work he would have to do on Hal, on Discovery. Like, what happens when I reconnect Hal after what happened up there? Let's go ahead and do a test run down here on Sal.
Right. Like, if I unplug all the things that Dave unplugged toward the end of the last movie and then plug them back in. Yeah, I wrote down lobotomy as well. Like, that very clearly seems to be what's going to happen here. And Sal is not crazy about the idea, but kind of agrees to it.
You'll learn a lot about Dr. Chandra's values here, too, because he does not treat Sal like a computer. The way he presents the idea seems like he's given Sal a choice. Like, do you want to participate in this thing? And by giving Sal independence over her life,
right,
let's call it, I think that says a lot about where computers are at in this movie and what the Balaban character's relationship is to them.
Yeah. Roy Scheider just could not get away from dolphins on set at this point in his career.
How fucking humid do you think it is in the Floyd household? Because what you've got is a dolphin pool right next to the dinner table, and then aquariums basically everywhere.
So many aquariums.
In every room. Every door sill in this house is just puddled.
Are you talking about the dorsals on the dolphins?
I should have said windowsill. I misspoke.
Yeah, I like seeing these dolphins. There's a little boy that like feeds him a couple of fish and then comes to dinner. I would be tough to get to dinner if there was a pool with dolphins I could be throwing fish into the mouth of.
Yeah, a lot of distractions around for the Floyd kid. Also distracted at the dinner table is Floyd himself, who is trying to figure out the right moment in the dinner conversation to tell his wife that he's going to go on a super dangerous space mission that leaves in 4 months.
It almost seems like retaliatory the way he does it, because she keeps reiterating that she does not, under any circumstances, want him to come watch her lecture.
Yeah.
And he's like, fine, I'm going to Jupiter for 4 months.
I would love it if that was the thing. This is how badly I wanted to go to your lecture.
Yeah.
And you're depriving me of this? I would rather die than be told I can't go to your lecture.
I was on the bubble about whether I wanted to do the mission. I mean, I went to the extent of getting the president to authorize it and everything. But now that I'm not invited to the lecture, I'm definitely going.
Contain your disappointment. Dolphins.
If you had any question about Roy Scheider's physical fitness in taking on this mission, we get just an astonishing number of vignettes, like a Rocky-esque amount of vignettes, training sequences even, of him getting ripped ahead of this mission.
Yeah, it's like he's doing everything. He explains like cryostasis to his son. It seems like for the first time.
Aren't you surprised in a science fiction movie set in space that it takes almost a half an hour to get to space in a 2-hour movie?
It takes a really long time. Like the previous film is also very ponderous. Like it's not in a hurry to get through plot beats or anything. But like it does feel like this movie is kind of two movies. Like it's a 30-minute prequel and then a 90-minute like sort of white knuckly space thriller.
I'm trying to put myself in the headspace of the 2001 superfan who is sitting in this theater on opening night, looking at their watch going, are we going to space or what? I'm looking at dolphins and shit. What is this?
There's some psychoanalysis taking place here too, like in his prep for going to space. His wife is saying like he's felt like all guilty and shit about what happened to the USS Discovery. And so this is his bid for absolution. And then we just smash cut to space. like you are so ready for there to be like a whole entire ass launch sequence and a bunch of business about going from one ship to the next and going through airlocks and stuff. No.
One of the great transitions in film history is, the ape smashing the bone.
That's bone.
In 2001, the bone, cartwheels up into space, and then that's how we transition into space. One of the great sequences of all time. Peter Hyams doesn't bite a lot of Kubrick rhymes, but what he does here is in this bedroom scene between Floyd and his wife, there is a movement between the sheets. And this movement becomes more erect. Set to the music of also Sprach Zarathustra.
As she talks about his shame and guilt over the deaths of the astronauts, his erection gets more and more powerful.
As the sheets tighten around his midsection, we smash cut to Discovery in space. Very similarly shaped.
Yeah. So Roy is getting unfrozen on this Russian ship by Helen Mirren, who plays kind of the commander of the Russian ship, Tanya Kerbuk. And
did it feel to you like she just disappeared in this role? I think the hair does a lot.
It really does. Yeah, the hair was a trip. I had never seen her with curly hair before.
Yeah.
And I mean, she's always been an incredible actor, but I feel like when you cast a Helen Mirren in like a Fast and Furious movie, you're not asking her to disappear into a role. You're asking her to kind of be a caricature of all previous Helen Mirren roles.
Sure.
And that's just not where she goes with this particular character. She is like actually trying to inhabit a naturalistic performance.
On a scale of Russian accents that goes from 0 to Dana Elkar. I mean, Helen Mirren's kind of blows off the top of the scale.
Yeah, it really does.
Hers sounds real.
Don't worry. There is nothing wrong.
So he's being woken up like a couple of days early because the U.S. sent a request. They take him into this meeting room on the Russian ship that looks exactly like the lunchroom on the Nostromo.
Yeah.
Every time we came in here, I was like, somebody's getting a chest burst.
I mean, the composition is almost one for one. It really felt inspired by that film in a profound way. And I think it's like so much of it is lensing and light, right?
Totally.
The similarities are astounding and repeated over and over again between the Alien films and this one in a surprising way. I didn't expect there to be that much inspiration between the two.
Yeah. Part of the reason they've woken him up is that there's some data that they're getting from Europa that they want him to look at. And what it indicates is that there's like some life going on down there. He doesn't believe it when he first looks at it. But as he's like wrapping his mind around this, there may be alien life arising on a moon in the Jovian system. They're also like, hey, so by the way, like since you have been asleep, the political situation back on Earth has gotten fairly fucked up. And they're trying to explain like something about like a blockade in like Honduras or something. And he is like so much more interested in the like data readouts about chlorophyll that. I
mean, he's as interested in that as the viewer is, really. Like every time this stuff was brought up, I was like, yeah, I get it. Like it's meant to introduce tension between folks from the two countries, but like, can we please get back to the science and intrigue shit?
Yeah. I mean, he's like quoting the Dana Elkar character at this point. He's like, we shouldn't give a shit about that. That's government stooge shit.
Just because our governments are behaving like asses doesn't mean that we have to.
There are a couple of sequences in this movie that really play with slow developing tension and release. And one of them happens here when they decide to send a probe to check out what they're reading on Europa. And this sonar ping effect is repeated for minutes.
This is the most annoying sequence in the movie by far. I just didn't want to listen to it any longer after a certain point.
There are probably no pleasant sounds, warning or otherwise, on a Russian-built craft, right? That's not the point.
Yeah, so they're like trying to probe the surface, trying to figure out what this chlorophyll is, trying to get a look at it. The probe gets, after just minutes and minutes of beeping heinously, gets a look at something green on the surface, but then it gets blasted and a ball of light leaves the surface of Europa. It sort of looks like it just like shoots into Jupiter, right?
Yeah. How did this happen is a discussion that they have afterward. I mean, they thought it was something organic, but that would be far-fetched. But can we also say it's truly just electrostatic buildup? That doesn't seem like it's reasonable either. And the reason why they're just sort of spitballing here in the after-mission meeting is that all the data they gathered from the probe was destroyed along with the probe. So they're like trying to go off a memory of what they experienced.
You would think that the telemetry would have like a tape recorder attached to it.
Nope. One probe is none, I guess. So the Leonov pulls up to Io using Jupiter's atmosphere, and this is another really interesting sequence. It puffs up a bunch of giant bags, and it uses Jupiter's atmosphere to slow itself because it's been speeding from Earth to here, and Floyd and a random cosmonaut hold each other during.
Yeah.
For a very long time.
She just kind of like invites herself into his little sleeping pod because better to like maybe die together than to die alone. It's like a little I thought this was a nice little scene, a very human moment that doesn't really connect super vividly to the rest of the plot, but just made the texture of the movie richer for me.
I thought a lot about this scene in relation to the few other scenes we get in the film depicting affection between two characters.
Mm-hmm.
And they're mostly between Bauman and the folks he left behind in his life. The rest of the folks on mission are pretty professionally affiliated.
Yeah.
So I think this scene punches above its weight in that way too.
Yeah, it
to humanize them, you know?
I agree. It is weirdly intimate and yet it doesn't feel like he's like betraying his wife or anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So after this successful bag inflation, Kurnow and Chandra are woken up.
Yeah. There was also like in this scene and then like for the rest of the movie, a Russian that had like kind of the same cut of beard that Roy Scheider did and just had a very similar face to him. And they kept cutting to him and he'd be like seated next to Helen Mirren in a scene. And I'd be like, wait, did Roy Scheider move? Oh, wait, is that Roy Scheider? No, that's a Russian guy.
You look in the credits and instead of Roy Scheider, it's just Pak Pakop Kop. Like,
isn't it bigger boat? So yeah, the air brake around Jupiter, and they're gonna go check out the American ship. Roy Scheider gets called to med bay to receive Chandra and Chernov as they're getting woken up. So excited to finally see John Lithgow in this movie. I saw that he was in the credits, and I was like, where is he? What is he going to be doing?
He's kind of the heart of the film. If Roy Scheider's character is too distant and weird for all of his dolphin habitats at homeness as a person, I feel like Lithgow's character feels like the one that you can most identify with in this movie.
There's a certain paranoia here.
Yeah, what the hell is going on?
I think the scene that really exemplifies that is this first spacewalk. They got aboard Discovery, and Lithgow's character's fear during the spacewalk feels so real.
Yeah.
And feels difficult as an actor to portray.
He is resistant to doing a spacewalk because he's like design at an easel guy.
Mm-hmm.
But they need him to go over there, and he does it with Max, played by Elia Baskin, another like great that guy of being a Russian bad guy in like a million Hollywood things.
And he's the Russian Kurnow, right?
Yeah.
Like they're mirrors of each other, and it's what makes them such a great team throughout this movie.
Yeah, and Max is like super capable and super chill with Kurnow. Like he is walking him through it in a way that is like, hey, it's okay that this isn't your bag. Like we're just going to make our way through this. Like it's never condescending, and it's always just there to like help Kurnow feel as at ease as he possibly can, which I really liked. It really made me love Max as a character.
Me too. I mean, this movie needs you to love him in order to feel what happens to him later. For Kurnow to say several times he's about to barf in his spacesuit reminds me that barfing in a spacesuit must be the very worst thing that could ever happen.
Yeah.
To anyone in any circumstance.
It's like you take the sliders for disgusting and dangerous and put them all the way up.
Yeah. Just the worst.
So yeah, it's kind of, it turns from like a spacewalk scene to almost like a rock climbing scene when they get over to the Discovery. They have to like attach themselves to it in the middle where it's spinning and then rappel down the side of it to the crew compartment, the spherical part. And it's like all dusty with sulfur. It's like been coated with sulfur for some reason. They go inside and the ship is super duper cold. But Max, not afraid of cold, being that he is Russian.
Has to be at least 100 below zero.
The typical Russian winter.
Smell is different story. How great is it to be back inside this ship? I think if you're watching the sequel, you'd sort of presume what the story is going to be. I might expect never to board this ship in this movie, that you may just grapple it and bring it home or whatever.
Yeah.
What a thing to be back on those same sets.
It's also just so interesting to think about it in the context of Max, who has never been there before. And his first thought when he smells the smell is, I'm smelling dead bodies, and is like horrified by that, almost has a panic attack about it.
Yeah, which makes him relatable to John Lithgow's character, who just had one a minute ago.
Yeah, they're panic attack buddies.
Yeah. So they get Discovery under control again, and they send Dr. Chandra over there using a really cool zipline device that they have bridging both ships. And in the HAL room, Dr. Chandra gets to work making HAL's voice processor work again. This is a movie that does a lot with sound design, and specifically sounds that don't sound good, like HAL getting his voice put back together here.
Yeah. I feel like this movie really benefits from them having worked out how to do all the special effects on 2001.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like, okay, like we saw like the weightlessness done by shooting the actor from below and lowering them toward camera on a rope like this.
Yeah.
It's good. They should do it in more movies. It looks great. It looks the way it's supposed to look, you know? Weightlessness is super hard to achieve on film.
It looks great. It looks great the whole movie. Meanwhile, Dr. Floyd is conspiring with Kurnow about placing a remote wire cutting device near the cables that keep HAL working, and it's triggered by a little red calculator that he's going to keep in his compartment just in case.
Yeah, they don't know what went wrong with HAL, so a kill switch, it seems like a prudent choice, and it's a remote kill switch.
The code is boobless.
Put in 9 nines, take the square root, and press the integer. That's all. In case of an emergency, even you can do it.
That's a great moment between him and Kurnow. Like, they like to have fun.
Yeah. A little high five. So they go over to where the monolith is now, and they have a little McLaughlin group.
Issue 1.
We should talk about the monolith for a moment, because the monolith from 2001 was not an amazing size. I mean, it was...
But you could get something done with it, you know? It wasn't... I mean, it was enough.
It was impressive in its own way.
Yeah. And it was great at oral.
This thing you can see from space. It is giant.
Well, I don't know. I guess so.
May I see it?
Really?
Please.
It's really big. It's like 2 kilometers long. Same proportions, but just scaled way up. And Helen Mirren wants to send an astronaut to like go check it out in person. And Roy Scheider's like, what are you, nuts? Like,
I wouldn't do that.
Oh, really? You wouldn't?
That's right, I wouldn't.
we don't know anything about it. We don't know what it's made of. We don't know what it's capable of. We don't know if it has wants or needs. And she kind of, being in charge of the Russian part of the mission, overrules him, and Max volunteers, and they start loading him up in a Russian pod, which is way less impressive than the American ones that we became familiar with in 2001.
Open the pod bay doors, please, Hal.
Every movie, but most science fiction movies especially, will make you believe this is a good decision somehow. Like, in the moment, this doesn't make sense. And Floyd is absolutely right. Why not send a probe? Why are you sending Max? Everyone loves Max. It seems unnecessarily risky. And what I wish there was in this scene was a stitch of dialogue that made this feel more like a military decision, which I think makes this choice make sense, instead of a scientific decision, which it is because it's made by a group of scientists, you know? Like, the science doesn't feel sound in choosing to do it this way.
It just feels unnecessarily dangerous, but that's the decision. And he goes down there and is like traveling along the surface. And there's a lot of discussion of like, what can they do to like minimize the potential that this pod will be perceived as a threat by the monolith.
Like maybe not stick out your grabby claws at it. Maybe keep them close to the chest of this thing.
I like the logic of that though. Like Roy Scheider is thinking it's just like walking out with your hands and, you know, where the monolith can see them. And John Lithgow's like, are you fucking kidding? Did you see the claws on that thing? That's not going to help.
When the monolith takes great umbrage with Max in the probe, it blows the probe. Let me see if I can get your take on this. All the way back to Earth. It looks like it goes all the way back to Earth at a fairly high rate of speed.
I wasn't sure quite how to interpret this because, yeah, like a bunch of like light kind of converges on the probe, and you do see the probe like spin off, but then the next shot is of a ball of light like rocketing past the Russian ship toward space. And yeah, I sort of interpreted that as like the probe is on that ball of light.
Especially when we cut to Earth in the next scene. I was expecting to get a reverse shot of the probe, like going through the atmosphere and like doing an extinction level event on Earth.
It would have been real fun to just hear Max going, "Oh!"
I mean, is this the fastest a human being has ever traveled?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
In a movie? Incredible.
The scene on Earth is of Zooey Deschanel's mom. Betty Fernandez is the credit in the IMDb, and she is like watching just like the news, and suddenly the news gets replaced with the image of David from the original film saying like, hey, heard you remarried, I'm not mad.
I think the dialogue means everything in the moments with Bowman. And what I mean by that is nothing he says is comforting. He seems like someone who's there to try to express some comfort, but the words coming out of his mouth feel like vague and almost hostile. And when you describe something as wonderful, that can mean a lot of things, right? Like, I feel like we've heard murderers say that to their victims in crime films before. Like, it seems almost psychotic to just say something wonderful is about to happen to someone who is not necessarily happy to see you, but maybe in a little bit, but not after you start talking, certainly. and then he's like, bye.
Yeah, gotta go. Back to your regularly scheduled news programming about the Russians and the Americans being on the brink of war.
I might just turn off the TV at this point.
Yeah.
If I'm her.
Yeah, I'm not in a great mood after this.
Neither's anyone on the Leonov been.
Yeah, Helen Mirren real bummed out about Max buying the farm, and Roy Scheider brings a plastic like accordion cup full of bourbon for her to drink.
He does this to soften the blow of him telling her that Max's death was her fault.
Yeah. Like, she asks him, like, do you think I should not have sent him? And it's like, yeah, we had a meeting about it, and I said that pretty explicitly. That was kind of the whole thing that meeting was about, was me arguing against you doing this.
Do we have a problem with data playback on this ship? Because that's like twice in a row. I feel like we could have used the data. This is a bonding experience, though, right? Because they're both in the same terrible situation. Of course, one of them caused it,
But he can relate. He caused a previous terrible situation.
Yeah.
He knows from losing astronauts.
This isn't a moment with any sort of subtext, though. This isn't like they both share a whiskey and then the camera pans down and Floyd's discovery moves in his pants.
Yeah, they don't cut to a pod bay door opening and a pod entering it.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
We do cut to a pod bay, however, where Dr. Chandra is talking to Hal, and he's like, okay, guys, nobody say anything. Hal is only going to talk to me. He's in a fucking mood right now, but I'm going to see if I can get some information out of him.
He's like the executive secretary of HAL, and HAL is like the CEO, the angry CEO of a powerful corporation. Like, if you can just get past reception, maybe you can have a meeting with HAL.
Yeah.
But until then, it's just Dr. Chandra.
Bob Balaban, take a memo.
Yeah.
Good morning, Hal. Good morning, Dr. Chandra.
Now, Hal, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Not at all.
Do you recall Dave Bowman and Frank Poole leaving the Discovery?
Certainly not.
I loved that John Lithgow was wearing Max's hat in this scene.
Yeah.
As a little tribute.
Yeah.
That very Russian type of hat.
Did we say RSVP Max already?
No, we should have.
All right, RSVP Max. Or in Russian, KP backwards R.
Y with like a weird like slash through one of the things. It's a made-up language.
It's totally impenetrable to me. I don't understand it.
You're telling me C, C, and C are the same thing as U, S, and S? And a P is an R?
Chandra very gently asks Hal, whatever happened to Frank and Dave? You remember them? These folks aren't familiar to Hal, which tells Dr. Chandra that the lobotomy was a great success, and he's destroyed the part of Hal's memory that would have remembered these crew people. And now there's a private conversation between Chandra and the rest of the crew, and Chandra explains that Hal's murder streak in the previous film was all Dr. Floyd's fault because Hal contained contradictory orders. On the one hand, he's got to conceal the information about the monolith from Frank and Dave and complete the mission alone. And the moment Frank and Dave start to present an obstacle to mission success, Hal's like, okay, well, it's within my programming, I guess, to take them off the board because we got to accomplish the mission, right? And these two missions in his head just cause a complete computer mental breakdown.
And Roy Scheider is shocked and dismayed to learn this. Like, Bob Balaban is blaming him for this having happened. And it turns out that these directives seem to have come, like, from the deep state.
Yeah.
The goddamn White House.
The American government went over Roy Scheider's head and put these directives into Hal, and he didn't even know about them. So, like, Hal knew things about the monolith and the real nature of the mission that had only been disclosed to the people that were in the freezer and wasn't disclosed to Frank and Dave. So Roy Scheider is horrified to learn this, but it does sort of get him off the hook in terms of like the crippling guilt he's been feeling, right?
Yeah, and you're right about the emotions on display here in this scene. There's also like a deep sadness to Dr. Chandra when he describes what happened to Hal and how he was manipulated. I'm just going to say he, like Hal.
Yeah.
I think Balaban's character carries so much weight in, I'm just going to say, like, humanizing Hal, humanizing Sal, like making their conditions something that you can feel empathy for. That absent that, Hal just becomes a monster in a monster movie instead of a character to care about.
Right.
As he is in this movie.
It's an interesting challenge because, like, Hal is so menacing in the previous film.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're, like, building in the kill switch and stuff, you're primed to be very afraid of Hal. So Bob Balaban's character almost feels dangerous because he is so, like, not prejudgmental of Hal.
Yeah.
Like,
because he's taking the side of the monster.
Right.
That's what bad guys do.
But he does a great job of making that feel like a human choice that isn't like driven by malice or some like ulterior evil motive.
The curvature of his character is such that like, I think for a hot minute you may suspect that Chandra could be bad because he's in league with Hal. But there's something so gentle about his way of being that I think you almost immediately dismiss that as an option. Like, Dr. Chandra just doesn't seem monstrous.
No, he would ask Hal before he would lobotomize Hal.
Right.
Unlike fucking Dave.
So do you want to go back to Earth? It seems like we have to. We cut down to Bauman's mother, who's in a coma, having her condition explained from one doctor to another, and it doesn't seem good for her. It seems like her coma is going to be somewhat permanent. Except once we cut to the nurse's station outside, which has been covered in screens inside all these hospital rooms, we see she wakes up and is delighted to have her hair combed by the same ghost that gave Dan Aykroyd a blowjob in Ghostbusters. A very nice ghost.
Yeah. Jesse Bowman, played by Herta Ware of TNG fame.
You look tense, Jean-Luc. Come and have a cup of
Wow. Yeah, great callback.
She gets her hair combed and then promptly dies.
Yeah.
I guess this is just like the spirit of Bowman getting its affairs in order or something.
Weird scene, huh?
I feel like you could cut this scene out and the movie doesn't lose a thing.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. Yeah.
And the scene with Zooey Deschanel's mom. Like I don't know what, like I guess it like makes it slightly more mystical, but I don't know to what end.
I mean, I think you need these scenes to absolutely establish that the apparition that appears to Floyd toward the end of the movie is actually Bowman.
Yeah. Right.
And not someone who is masquerading as him.
So back in on the Russian ship, everybody is called to watch the TV, and like side by side, the administrator of the Russian Space Agency and the administrator of the American Space Agency announced that war has broken out on Earth, and all of the astronauts have to go over to the Discovery and close the door, and all the cosmonauts have to stay aboard their ship, and never the twain shall meet again due to the political situation millions of miles away from them.
What do you think of the choice of not showing any war at all? Like either in like file footage or news reports or whatever. Like we hear it described, we experience the tension between the two crews, but I think by not showing it, we're made to feel it the way the crews do, in that it's so far away kind of way.
It's theoretical.
That it doesn't feel real, yeah.
Yeah, and that we're scientists, we're not crazy politicians thing kind of rings in your ears as this decision is made, but the ships are, like, they dismantle the bridge between the ships, and the Americans go sit on their ship and are, like, bored, basically. They don't have anything to do at this point.
I mean, there's nothing to do for Floyd except talk to Hal in a scene that absolutely is spine-tingling to me. I mean, it starts off like offer to play chess that is turned down, like just killing time, whatever.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden Hal is like, hey, I got a message for you. Want to know what it says? It says you better get the fuck out of here in 2 days or else. And Floyd's like, who sent it and how did it come? Hal says he doesn't know.
Oh.
It doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense. And Floyd rightfully is like, all right, someone's pranking me. This is bullshit. And Hal's like, not a prank. I got to tell you, this is the real thing. And Floyd's like, well, without proof, I'm not believing it. And I'm not listening. So there.
And we don't even have enough gas to do it in the first place. So forget we even had this conversation. And Hal is like, okay, the message sender is providing a little bit more information.
How about the choice of words here? I was David Bowman is what comes back. And look behind you.
Yeah.
Ugh, I'm getting the chills just thinking about this scene. It's the creepiest thing to hear on a giant, mostly empty spaceship. And there he is. There's Keir Dullea, like in a red spacesuit, walking through Discovery while Floyd follows him. And you get a bunch of different versions of the old man makeup when they talk. And I gotta say, it doesn't get any better than the old man makeup in 2001 and 2010, right?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Pretty fucking solid. Like, this is like a few years before they put DeForest Kelley in old man makeup in TNG, which famously looked like burlap.
I mean, when you aim for Keir Dullea in old man makeup in 2010 and you miss, you land among the DeForest Kellys wearing a burlap sack. Don't you?
Sure do.
That's the inspirational poster hanging in like a makeup department, right?
He's not making a ton of sense the way he's talking, repeating the thing about something wonderful is going to happen, but you better get the fuck out of here before it does. And Roy Scheider is like, you're asking me to do something that is totally insane without a lot of information. He's like, well, that's all the information I can provide. Like, maybe afterwards I can like check back in one more time, but maybe not, who knows?
Yeah.
Also, I'm a baby.
pretty good looking baby in this scene too.
Thought so. Yeah.
All the effects, like I love the sequencing of this moment. The cutting back and forth to the different Bowmans that we get.
Yeah. It's just done in cuts too. It's not done in like weird morph effects or anything like that.
I think it sows a kind of confusion in the Bowman character himself, right? Like he does not know how to present himself to folks. He doesn't really know what to say or how to say it to convey the information he's trying to. It makes you feel a sort of empathy for the Bowman character too, in a weird way. Because he's kind of lost in time and space.
Yeah. It doesn't really seem like he knows what's going on with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or can't put it in human terms.
Yeah.
The whole thing. It's wonderful.
So Floyd immediately spacewalks back to the Leonov, and on board he tells Kerbuk about the 2-day deadline that Bowman ordered, and floats a plan in the room to use Discovery as a kind of booster rocket that they can discard once they use all of its fuel in order to get home.
I feel like the monolith disappearing mid this pitch is how he sells the pitch, right? Like he did not go over with a winning, like sold in the room idea for her, but then when the monolith disappears, he's like, yeah, maybe we should get out of here.
This is the attention-getting conclusion that any TED Talk aspires to.
So, good deal. The Russian ship does have a ship-sized clamp attached to it, so it can just clip onto the Discovery, and their plan is to kind of use the fuel on the Discovery to do an initial burn, and then they'll ditch the Discovery like a first stage rocket and do another burn with the Russian ship. And this is all sort of like hand-wavy orbital mechanics stuff. Like there's a window that, you know, the ships would have had to wait several more days to leave in, and they go ahead and do this. Seems like NASA is pretty pissed that their rules are being ignored.
Well, the major tension in this plan, like it's one thing to have this pie in the sky plan. It's quite another to ask Hal to do it, because Hal's going to have to be the one that drives Discovery and makes the whole thing possible. And by discarding Discovery, you're also discarding Hal. So is he going to want to do this? That's for Dr. Chandra to find out.
Balaban is not sure. They're basically asking Dr. Chandra, like, go over there and get Hal to do this plan. We don't care how you do it, but don't tell him like something that would make him kill all of us, because we think that that might be what Hal is all about. And he doesn't want it. He's like very resistant to this.
This is 2 scenes in a row that are interrupted kind of, right? Because this moment gets interrupted by something happening on the surface of Jupiter. Like my face the day before a Greatest Gen live show. There's a black dot that is growing in size.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Chandra goes back over to Discovery on their new pulley system that has replaced the nice, easy bridge that they had. Like when they extended that bridge, I was like, well, somebody's getting bonked off this bridge and floating away into space for sure.
Yeah.
And
nice payoff.
The payoff is instead, no, we just have a way worse system now that's going to be even scarier when somebody tries to use it in a dangerous situation.
Balaban cuts it pretty close.
It does.
Right?
Yeah.
Like there's a countdown initiated before Hal fires the engines, and Balaban's still on Discovery trying to talk Hal into lighting the fuse on this thing. And when we get down to 30 seconds, I'm like, Balaban's staying on Discovery, right? Like, how fast does he think he can transit out of there and onto the Leonov?
It's very tense, and it's like all happening amid the revelation that this giant hole on the surface of Jupiter is filling up with monoliths. There's like a cloud of monoliths in there.
Aren't you glad they didn't try to show this effect? Like, I think the CRT screens do a lot in this movie.
Yeah.
To bail you out of an effect that you're just not capable of making.
Right. Yeah, it's all kind of like grainy, like radar footage of what they're describing.
But the effects they are able to create, like everything in space, everything having to do with the ships, I think is beautiful and amazing.
Yeah, I mean, It did have like a thing, like an 80s movie relic, which I wonder if they'll ever do like a Criterion restoration of this and clean it up. But like occasionally I could see the mats around the ships clipping around in space.
Yeah.
But like, aside from that, everything holds up great and just looks beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So we're having this conversation where Chandra is talking to Hal about what they need Hal to do. And Hal is kind of like, yeah, like it seems weird that you're asking me to do this. Like, doesn't this not work for a number of reasons?
And also, there's an amazing thing on Jupiter. Don't you want to stay and check it out? Why are we leaving?
There's sort of a needs of the many argument that goes unspoken here in an interesting way. But Hal kind of wraps his mind around this being a needs of the many moment and self-sacrifices and gets them out of there. And then Chandra has to like rock climb back up to the Russian ship. And it's really touch and go for a minute. I really thought Chandra was going to die.
The mechanics of space is so interesting to me. Like it's not like you're hanging on the side of a jet as it takes off.
Yeah.
The way it works, at least the way the movie is telling you that it works, is that like a person is moving at the same speed as the ship, which means like the forces in play on its acceleration aren't lethal in the same way, right?
Yeah, it's just that like the momentum is changing over time, so
yeah,
it works a little bit like gravity. And the moment the Russian pulls him back aboard and we get that iconic Predator arm shot of two, like an American spacesuit and a Russian spacesuit holding hands in space. It's a real stand up and cheer moment.
Yeah. And then the door cuts Bob Balaban's arm off, which for some reason was holding an Uzi that's like still firing as it hits the ground. And it's ripped.
Yeah.
And it's the same black arm that's been used many times throughout Hollywood.
And it cuts back to the Russian and he takes off his mask and it's the Predator and he's going, my God, it's full of stars.
Amazing how this movie ends.
Yeah, surprising.
The movie ends with like a credit sequence of like Roy Scheider turning to camera, thumbs up. Helen Mirren. Like, they even end it like the Predator movie.
John Lithgow with like bandoliers of ammunition over him going like...
Keir Delay like holding a Bic disposable razor to his side of his face and like snapping it. Someone recut the credits to this movie to the score of Predator. Make it just like that.
So Hal and Dave have a little conversation.
Yeah.
Which was nice. Nice to see them back together, not mad at each other anymore.
Yeah. I mean, they were left alone.
I'm afraid.
Don't be. We'll be together.
Where will we be?
Where I am now.
Bowman's really pulling the strings here. He's like, Hal, you got to turn the satellite dish back towards Earth. I got something to blow in to them. And Hal's like, happy to do it.
Yeah.
Do you want to be friends while I'm here or anything? And Bowman's like...
No hard feelings, right? For like all that other stuff?
Bowman's like, actually, this is a revenge fantasy that's playing out for me. Once you do me this favor, it's over for you.
Yeah. As the Russian ship starts its burn, John Lithgow notices that Jupiter is shrinking until it's eventually all whole.
Yeah.
Then it explodes, and we get a huge banger. One of the Russian guys comes out of his seatbelt, and I thought for sure we were going to get another Event Horizon, like blood and guts splattered against the back of the hull scene.
A movie that has been fairly devoid of like graphic violence or death up until this moment saves the most gruesome for last.
But no, he is probably fine. I think this is rated PG, this movie. And the message that was sent back to Earth is a keep out warning for Europa. All of the other Jovian moons, have at them. You can do whatever you want, but Europa, is off limits. Attempt no landing.
Yeah, you can have all the rest of these piece of shit moons. I'm keeping this one. And stay out.
Yeah, send Sean Connery to be the sheriff on Io or whatever.
That's my rotten little part.
So upon receiving this message, the military superpowers of Earth draw down their war-making, and peace is achieved. Ben, I know we have time to answer this question. I'm just going to pose it to you. Do you think extraterrestrial life would trigger this kind of peace in our world?
I think with a message like attempt no landing on Europa with an implied threat behind that, like I will fuck your shit up if you land on Europa. Like maybe it's not so much peace as like we have a bigger enemy that we need to point our nukes at now.
Our country is so fucking stupid. I would fully expect well, no alien species is going to tell us what to do. We're going anywhere.
Drive my fucking space Cybertruck out there and do the fuck I want.
I'm not so sure. Yeah. But the depiction of peace in this film, what a happy ending. Like an unambiguously happy ending. 2001 ends in a acid trip of a what the fuck was that kind of feeling. This one actually puts a bow on the story. We get 2 stars now.
Yeah.
Life is beginning on Europa.
Like Jupiter turned into a little mini star and it's now going to be its own star system within a star system. And like we watched like Europa turn into a swampy, marshy, foresty planet that has a monolith on it.
You hear the sound of the 3 lasers from the Predator. And then the score. Dooga dooga dooga. Dooga dooga dooga. Roy Scheider turns the camera. See, it works.
Ah, it's so good.
It fucking works.
Nobody has ever made this connection before. That's why the Greatest Trek Film Fest is the podcast people need to be listening to.
Did you like this movie, Ben?
I still don't know really what the monolith is.
The very first time seeing it. How about that?
First time seeing it, I really liked it. It seems like the kind of movie that I would have for sure rented as a kid, and I'm not totally sure how I missed it.
Yeah.
But I loved the aesthetics of it. Like, put me in a analog space future any day of the week, and I'm going to be a happy camper. You know, it's like I'm also just like an enjoyer of like Cold War bullshit movies. So I liked that aspect of it. I thought it was like a very interesting treatment. And like I have seen a lot of Peter Hyams' work. Not a lot of it is like this. Like this is a very unusual film for him relative to the other stuff that I have seen of his.
You're saying this is a Hyams outlier?
It's a Hyams outlier. And it makes me kind of wish his career had more beats like this, because like straight to DVD Universal Soldier sequels are fine, and like everybody should like have a career. And if the kind of movie he loved making was Van Damme movies, like maybe he found his best destiny. But like it feels like he is such a talented filmmaker that he could have made like much more like high-minded fare.
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't a director jail level offense. This movie made money. This movie was reviewed well.
Yeah.
He deserved a great and successful career based on this film, I thought.
Yeah, and like...
I mean, maybe he was a monster.
Yeah, who knows? But yeah, it seems like he kind of like went in a very different direction after this. And yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I want to watch some of his other movies. Like, he has some like crime movies.
Hey, Ben.
Yeah.
Next time we get a break in new Star Trek, Peter Hyams Film Festival.
Bow, 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 bow. That's really going to put butts in seats. People are going to be, oh shit, they're doing the Hyams movies? Whoa.
No one's ever done all the Hyams movies.
Do you think they'll do End of Days?
Hell yeah.
What about Narrow Margin?
You know it.
Starring Gene Hackman.
Fuck yeah.
Do you think they'll do The Star Chamber starring Michael Douglas?
I love this idea. Got to do it.
Great. Capricorn 1? Wow.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. How about you? Did you like 2010?
For all the reasons that you liked it, I also enjoyed it quite a bit. I really respect the restraint of Peter Hyams' choices in this movie, not to copy a bunch of Kubrick shit, to know going in, like, why even try to make a movie as good? Just make your own film. To just remove all comparison between the two films outside of the connective tissue of the characters, I thought was a really smart choice.
It does sort of feel like the choice that James Cameron made with Aliens. Like,
it does, yeah.
Go in a totally different direction, just set it in the same universe.
I really liked how this film looked. I thought it was really pretty. I really liked all the lights and the colors.
Yeah.
It was a very cinematic film in a very satisfying way. I didn't like the sounds. A lot of the sounds pushed me back into my seat. But visually, what an achievement. What a fun movie. A movie I don't feel like a lot of folks talk about as a good science fiction film, but I sure liked it.
Yeah. You want to see if there's anything you like in the Priority 1 inbox, Adam?
Oh, yeah. Let's see if there are strange voices coming from there.
Let's see if it's full of stars.
Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
Adam, we have a couple of P1s here. The first one is of a promotional nature. It goes like this. I was born and raised in Swannanoa,
Ankylosaur,
North Carolina. I still live in the Smoky Mountains of NC. My hometown and so many places like it that I and probably many of you love for their natural beauty and their vibrant culture have been well and truly destroyed. But we're mountain people and we are resilient. We will recover. But we need your help. As a longtime FOD, I have always been amazed at the compassion and ingenuity shown by this community. I and Appalachia thank you in advance for everything. The call to action here is come to Western NC with a coordinated plan to volunteer and help, and I promise you will fall in love with these mountains and their people. pay.payitgov.com/NC donations is a place you can go to donate, volunteer for the Red Cross or World Central Kitchen are some other ideas. And yeah, I wholeheartedly support this project. I have some dear friends in New York whose elderly parents are up there in Asheville, and it's been real hard from what I hear. So yeah, please go to pay.payitgov.com/NC donations and see if you can do something to help out, even if it's just a little bit.
You don't have to be able to pronounce the name of the places that you're offering support to, whether it's Swannanoa or any other spot. A bunch of places could use your help. And it's hurricane season, so your help will be necessary for the short and the long term. So our hearts go out to y'all in those affected places.
And my apologies for mispronouncing Appalachia, because there is, in fact, a pronunciation guide for both Appalachia and Swannanoa, but I didn't look at them before I butchered my way through that, and that's like the last thing those people need right now.
I mean, it's just insult to injury at this point with what happened with that pronunciation, Ben. I just probably should do just a bonus episode where you have the opportunity to apologize.
I am hearing that FEMA will be providing grants to people that heard me pronounce it like that.
Swannanoa. Hang in there, guys. We're thinking about you.
Yeah, we sure are.
Ben, we got a Priority 1 message here. It's from Tom from Seattle. I think we know Tom from Seattle.
Yeah, we've heard from Tom before.
It's to you and me. The message goes like this. A+++++. Great pod. Highly recommended. And that's it.
Did he have a pronunciation guide for the word plus? Because I've always heard that that's just a single syllable word.
Did you watch the David Chase documentary about Sopranos?
Oh, we haven't gotten to it yet. It's on our list.
There is a really fun scene where Drea Di Matteo is talking about going out for casting on that show. And she was one of many who was considered. But the thing that got her the role was how she said the word no, which was Noah. Big fun.
Good stuff.
So I tried to give it that spin.
Thanks, Tom from Seattle. I hope you're talking about our pod.
I think Tom from Seattle heard the call that Priority 1 messages were available for the Greatest Trek Film Festival and for episodes ahead on Lower Deck. So thanks for getting into the Jumbotrons and supporting the show. You can do that at MaximumFun.org/Jumbotron.
Thank you.
Hey, Ben.
What's that, Adam?
Did you find yourself an Edward Larkin in this film?
Edward Larkin. Gotta give it to my boy Max, I think. I feel like John Lithgow is the heart of the film. I totally agree with that take by you, but Max is right there alongside him as like one of the most lovable characters. And I just like that he's like brave and cool and doing all the right stuff, but he's also like, hey man, like this is cool. Like this is a cool space adventure we're on. I'm not taking everything super seriously. I'm not dour. I'm not one of those gloomy Russians.
I mean, you want to talk about distinctions between this film and the one before. Joy or levity, not a big part of the first film in any way. And you sure do get that from a Max.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I can't choose against Max either. I just love how he and Kurnow were on the level from jump. Like, as soon as Kurnow was thawed out, he gets out of that pod, and they both have that ripped arm handshake. You know it's on from that point forward.
Totally.
Well, Ben, this is the second to the last Greatest Trek Film Festival film. I can't believe we're wrapping it up next week.
It's wild.
Yeah.
We just have our one last segment here on the show. It's Warning Bois. Why don't you pull a Warning Bois off of our company Slack and let the people know what folks have been saying about our show on the internet.
Prepare a buoy and launch it when ready.
Warning buoys.
An emergency buoy. A warning buoy.
Ben, we got a post here to Reddit. Can you believe that?
Wow.
It's from Earthbending Sith, and it's about this film festival project. Here's the title, I Love Film Festival. Here's the body, Alien. Amazing. And the next is my favorite movie of all time. Cannot wait. They're referring to Jurassic Park, I think.
Yeah.
These guys are the best, and they just keep reproving why they are my favorite pod dynasty. We're reading this before our Supernova episode comes out, so I imagine this post might be deleted. Get in there and upvote it before it does. You guys. Really like reading the great reviews of this little mid-season project. Really love watching movies with you again, man.
Yeah. You know what I would love to see is a Warning Bois on the Star Trek subreddit about our show. Because like I feel like the culture of Reddit is if we like had Rob do it from our official account, like say, hey, check out the Greatest Trek Film Festival over on the Star Trek.
Yeah, it's fucking narc shit.
They'll be like, you can't do that, man. That's self-promotion.
Yeah. Rob rolls through Star Trek Reddit like Buscemi holding the skateboard like, hello, fellow Star Trek fans.
They can tell.
Yeah, this is a little bit of preaching to the choir here in our Reddit. Our Reddit's mostly great and positive, but yeah, if we want to grow the show, let's get the word out in all the other places, right?
Yeah, that would be great. Would love to see, and much appreciated to the folks who do those posts because it helps us get the word out. We're going to leave the rest of the pod in Wynde's capable hands, and she will tell you about the exciting movie and exciting special guest we have coming up next week.
You're not going to believe who wandered through our podcast studio doors to do an episode of Greatest Trek Film Festival. Blew me away.
Yeah. I mean, it's maybe we shouldn't even say special guest because it feels like that could get canceled at any moment.
Yeah, indeed. Take it away, Wynde.
Greatest Trek is an Uxbridge Shimoda podcast on the Maximum Fun Network. It's hosted by Ben Harrison and Adam Pranica, and it's produced and edited by Wynde Priddy. Next week on Greatest Trek Film Fest, it's the final episode before we get back into Lower Decks. The guys have invited on that special guest, and I don't know if I want to ruin the surprise, but we're going to be going back to 1985 to watch The Goonies. As always, we want to thank the Max Fund members who support this show financially. Members get access to all the network's bonus content, plus the new bonus episodes that Ben and Adam put out every single month. You can set up your membership in just a few minutes at MaximumFun.org/join, and we really appreciate it. Thank you to Nick Dittmore, who created the show art, and Adam Ragusea, who composed the theme music. Check out Greatest Trek's YouTube channel and make sure you're subscribed over there. And don't forget about podshop.biz, where you can find some fun merch and get signed up for the Greatest newsletter. Thanks to Rob Adler and Bill Tilley for running the @GreatestTrek social media pages. Follow those accounts and use the hashtag #GreatestTrek when you post about the show online. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week for Greatest Trek Film Fest.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
supported
Directly
by you.